In this video I am gonna show you how you can make your most basic looking miniatures stand out with a quick and easy base out of cork coasters. If you want to see the great looking result, stay with me till the end here on 29 Squigs. This mini honestly already comes with a great looking base, but I kind of felt like it was not really enough, because the main issue with this base is that the transition from the plastic armor to the black base is kind of rough if you just leave it in the original state. So that's why I decided to add this little cork plate and also tilt it a bit so that the posture of the mini is a bit more upright, because I felt like it was leaning a bit too much in front, and I think I fixed that little issue with this simple base. I then added some stones with the help of super glue and some sand with the help of white glue to just make the whole base a little bit more appealing, to add more detail, and also to make that transition from the cork base towards the original plastic base a bit more smooth, so that later on you won't see where the custom base ends and the original base starts. Then it was finally time to start painting. Before painting I didn't really make up a color scheme, so I just started with the skin color because I knew I wanted to have it green for sure, but later on you will see that will lead me to run in some problems, because I basically did not see the whole picture of the mini in the beginning. I just knew, okay, skin will be green, then I figure out the rest. But yeah, basically I started with a base dark green color and then added in some highlights. For this mini I really try to focusing on blending the different layers. If you have seen my previous video, like my first ever video, you will notice I had really rough edges in between each color grading for the skin tone, for example. So here I really try to be better on that and to really smoothly blend over the different shades of the green, for example. And I think it actually worked out quite well, and I made some improvements on this technique here. For the leather parts of the model I decided to go with the classic brownish leather look. I, as basically for everything else, looked up quite a lot of tutorials to give that leather a worn out old look. To achieve this effect I basically just worked myself up from the darkest brown color towards the lightest, same as I would for the skin tones, for example, but instead of painting whole surfaces as for the skin tones, I just used small brush strokes to imitate that worn out look and try to spread them evenly over the whole leather textures, and especially focusing on folds and small holes and those little leather straps that hang down from the model everywhere, and really work those parts out where the leather would be bended or even more worn out in reality. To finish up the leather parts and also to bring all of those different shades of brown better together, I decided to go over it with a dark brownish wash to just make it look a bit more even. For all of the metal parts I really wanted to make them fit the rest of the mini, so also wanted to stay in that worn out dark looking style. I mean, probably that's grimdark, I'm not a pro, but maybe that's the style I went with here. I decided to only use a dry brush for the armor parts because I feel like it really gives it that metal look by nature of the dry brush already. I started with a mixture of brown, black and a metal color and covered the whole model with it. Then I went over by only the metal color and then a lighter metal color basically. Sorry, I don't know the names of the colors anymore, but basically that's how I worked my way up from very dark to brighter and brighter, and then added in some final highlights with a very light silver metal color, and really tried this time to only focus on some very small areas to not make the whole thing look too shiny, because I feel like especially with the highlights you have to be very careful, because if you set too many it kind of loses the whole effect and you can basically start all over again by covering the highlights back up and putting in back that base tones. So yeah, I really try to be careful with this time. So I try to focus the highlights mainly on the helmet, also to draw the maximum attention to the head of the mini, and also to the weapons it carries, to draw the viewer's attention to the important parts of the mini and not get distracted by unimportant details like you can see me painting here on the back, for example. As you can see here, I also decided to paint that face on the shoulder of the mini in silver. I later on decided to change those colors up a bit to make it a bit more interesting. Unfortunately, I lost all of the footage of me painting the shoulder pad, so yeah, I'm very sorry for that. Probably it got somehow lost in the conversion. At this point in the paint job I had to decide for another color, so I decided to go full try-hard. So I looked up the color wheel online on Adobe, and since I already had the green from the skin tone and the orange from the leather kind of, I decided to take blue as my third color to go with the triad color scheme. So same as for the other colors, I just went for a very dark blue as a base and then worked my way up in the brightness of the colors and ended up with highlighting with a very bright blue, only a very few surfaces at the very top of the miniature. Here you can see already the finished shoulder pad. Sorry again for me losing my footage. I basically also decided to make it blue just because I felt like I can add some more of that blue into the model to also really widen it out, because otherwise you had only the blue at the bottom and on the other shoulder, and with the whole shoulder pad also being in blue, I feel like you kind of spread out the different blue tones over the whole model a bit more evenly. In the next cut you can also see the blade. I decided to paint it in like a non-metallic metal-ish blue. I just saw a tutorial online, but I really didn't like the way it turned out, so you will only see these few shots with the blade. I later then cover it up in a nicer looking silver non-metallic metal style. Well, it's not really non-metallic metal, I mean I tried my best here, but I really feel like this is a pro technique. I'm really not having the skill set yet to do properly, but I mean it was my first try. You will see it later how it turned out. For the handlebar I try to keep it simple and just make it look like wood, and then with some light brown brush strokes, I added in some earrings here. So now finally back to the base. I decided to also dry brush the whole armor laying in the dirt to just match the overall metal look I decided to go for on the mini itself. I used gold here instead of silver just to give it a bit more contrast to the rest of the mini, and then went over it with some Agrax Earth Shade to really make it look like it's there in the dirt since several years. And then I went over it with the dry brush again, just with some plain gold, and then picked out some of the topmost little details with the fine brush and really adding in some fine details where the light still reflects even though it's laying there since several years. To make it recognizable as a Stormcast Eternal, I then decided to paint that one shoulder pad in the iconic blue and white colors. If you're still with me, thank you a lot for watching it this far, and also feel free to subscribe to my channel to not miss out on any updates on my project. And also I would really appreciate it if you could leave me your honest review and your honest feedback down in the comment section. It would really help me out quite a lot because I'm a bit unsure on what I'm doing here yet. So every feedback is welcome, and I would really appreciate if you take the time for it. So now back to the video. Here you can see me painting that white star on the shoulder pad, and also that could be part of the feedback. Do you want me to talk you through the whole video, or would you rather like me to shut up and just give you some nice background music so that you can watch it all on your own? Just give me your honest opinion. So after finishing the paint job on the armor in the dirt, I also covered the shoulder pad with the same shade I used before for the whole armor, and I really feel like this makes it look super dirty. I'm very happy with the outcome. And then I went back onto the dirt itself with the terrain. Also here I used the dry brush technique. I first dry brushed the whole dirt in a very dark brown, then went over it with the same shade I used for the armor and the leather of the model, and then went back in with the dry brush with some lighter colors to really work out some small highlights. Afterwards I picked out the stones I glued in manually and made them in a different color to make them stand out a bit and also to give the whole dirt a bit of variety. and then went over those stones also with the dry brush to really highlight those edges and make them shine a bit. In general, I try to not get too many colors into the dirt of the base itself. I basically limited myself here to the gray of the stones and the brown of the dirt, to not distract the viewer's eyes too much of that, because I want the focus to be on the miniature itself, and for the base only on the armor that's laying there in the dirt, so that nobody gets distracted by a random stone that for some reason is painted super well. My next step was then to put in some static grass. You have to note this is the very first time of me ever using it, so I didn't really do it properly, because the static grass ended out pretty flat. It was not standing upright. I did not use that static container they want you to use. I also watched some tutorials later on where I learned that actually you have to put it on the miniature in a certain technique to really make the grass stand up straight and not lay flat on the ground like it did for me. Well, now I know, so for the next one I can make it better. To finish up that miniature, I went back onto the big axe it is holding in his hand, because I really didn't like my paint job I did there before. I don't know why I chose that bluish look, like it really doesn't look like anything or fits the miniature at all. I think I just wanted to add in some blue on the top corner of the miniature, but it did not really sell the effect of non-metallic metal or anything like it, so that's why I had to go back in there, because I really wasn't satisfied with how the miniature was looking. So what I did is I tried the same technique but just using grayish colors instead of blue ones, and basically worked myself up, as always, from the darkest to the brightest color, and really try to limit myself here with the highlights, even though it is very tempting to put in quite a lot of highlights. But as you're doing, you realize also that the more highlights you set, the less of an effect the highlights have, because you create less of a contrast, which is basically the main goal of setting highlights at all. So that's already a small reveal of the final product, but stay with me till the end, because there will be a proper reveal of the final 2 miniatures. So now to the little helper of the big guy, which is called a Stab-Grot. As you can see here, I had to hand drill the holes in the feet, because the drill I used was basically too small to hold in my electrical screwdriver, so the only chance was to turn the thing with my hand. I then put in those little copper wires, which are originally from my bonsai trees I use for bending the branches. I then cut down the copper wires to the appropriate length and then connected it with super glue to the small cork base I created in advance. I then did the same steps as I did for the bigger mini and just added some big stones and with white glue some sand texture to really give it enough detail to make it look appropriate for the small scale it is. For the rest of the mini I used the same color scheme as for the mini before. I don't show it here because it's basically exactly the same steps again as I did for the big mini already. So that's why we make a big jump in time and you can already see the finished paint job on the mini itself. I'm very happy how it turned out, especially the blade. I think the non-metallic metal, well, it's a far reach to already call that non-metallic metal, but basically what I want to say, I'm very happy and satisfied with how the blade turned out. After priming the base, I had to go over it again with some black paint to make sure that everything really is saturated with black color, because I realized the cork soaks up the paint quite a lot, which leaves behind some brighter spots where you can still see the cork through. So that's why I had to go back in there again to make sure that everything is plain black. To get that rocky texture, I went over it with a dry brush and some grayish colors. First with a dark gray, and then, as I've already said 10 times before, working myself up in the different color gradients until I reached a very light gray tone with which I only covered the most top parts and the edges of the stones. But then again, as before on the other miniature, I painted the sand in brownish colors and went over it with the dark shade to give it a bit more of a dirt structure. Finally, to finish that base and also to make it fit a bit more in style to the other mini, I decided to also add in some small spots of glue to bring in some static grass. I tried a different technique here with a sieve basically to make the grass stay upright. It didn't work out perfectly, but already a lot better than on my first try. So yeah, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching if you're still here. I personally think those small little custom bases really make the difference. And now it's time to look at the finished minis.